announcements, and we're going to begin with the incumbent supervisor for the town of Clarkstown, Alexander J. Gromack.
Okay, well, thank you. Pleasure to be on and to discuss some of the important issues facing our town. It's been my pleasure to be supervisor over these last 7 years. Prior to that, I was a county legislator in New York State Assemblyman. We've made tremendous progress in turning Clarkstown around. As was noted earlier, we've been able to cut 72 positions. We had a tax decrease in 2011. Very proud of our AAA bond rating from Standard & Poor's when the county rating is going down, the federal government is going down. The consolidation and the cuts that we've made has saved over $7 million each and every year. We've made such consolidation efforts like the Insurance and Purchasing Department, the Lighting District, and the Highway Department. And a very important referendum is on the ballot combining the receiver of taxes and the town clerk. If that's approved, that will save $500,000 a year. Our business community has new confidence in Clarkstown. Look at the old Bradley Shopping Center renovated into a beautiful Stop and Shop. You go up and down the 303 corridor, 59, you see new businesses coming in, Kohl's, United Structural Steel, Lowe's up in Nanuet. And of course, we're all anxiously awaiting the demolition and the construction of a new Nanuet Mall by Simon. We've also moved forward with our revitalization projects of our downtowns, and I like to say that not only do we revitalize the brick and mortar of our community, but the spirit of our community. And as we revitalize our downtowns, we see the private businesses also revitalizing their entities. I'm proud of the $30 million that I've worked to get in grants from the federal, state, and local level, and I've used my experience in Albany and the county legislature to bring those dollars here to do important road, drainage projects, sewer, and revitalization. I'm very proud of our planning board and the work they've done with our comprehensive plan. It's protected the integrity of our zoning, but it went one step further. It looked at a host of other issues, from police protection to open space to recreation to our state corridors to our housing needs. So it really was what a comprehensive plan should be, and it's received awards and accolades from around the state and around the nation. I also want to state that we're proud of some outside awards that our town has received. We're rated as one of the more desirable communities to live in the nation based on a CNN Money Magazine poll, and also one of the safest communities consistently in the top 10 rated by CQ, which is an organization that rates police services. I want to continue to be your supervisor so that I can continue to bring down the cost of government and still provide the essential programs that we all want and deserve, from recreation to the safety of our homes, and look forward to your continued support.
Thank you. Mr. Sabatini, your opening statement, sir.
Thank you for coming out and or listening. I'm very happy to be here. I'd like to start by saying I'm not a career politician. I'm a career businessman. I've been 40 years just shy of 40 years in the corporate world, the bulk of which was spent as a chief financial officer in 3 different companies. I know finance, and I know how to manage a business. I'd like to, rather than dwell on myself, talk about 3 specific issues tonight: taxes, term limits, and transparency. Taxes, to begin with, the reserve fund, which is very important to the town, is being used to give you an illusion of either reduced taxes or flat taxes. It's a release of funds from the reserve that was established on the sale of the transfer station, and it is a depleting asset. Clarkstown, as you've heard already, is the highest tax town in Rockland County on a per capita basis. And Rockland County is the 4th highest county in the United States. That's up from number 5 last year. We seem to be walking backwards. The taxes since Mr. Gromack's appointment have risen on average 5% a year for 8 years, or 40%. I wonder if your property values have also risen 40% in the past 8 years, or your IRA, or your salary, or for that matter your Social Security. Probably not. I am on Social Security, and I can tell you it hasn't increased by 40%. Term limits. 3,500 people signed the petition to put term limits on the referendum. They were told it's illegal. I understand the law, and I think I appreciate their decision. They could have, however, voted themselves term limits, which they decided not to. And in fact, when the 2 Republicans put up term limits as a for a public hearing. The town board, by majority, voted it down. They don't think that you need to have a voice in this. They know better. As far as transparency, we had 3.4, 3.4, 2.5, and 2.5 in police salary through arbitration, the first two anyway. And those are being covered, the first two, 6.8% is being covered by the General Reserve, again, a depleting asset. That's from the Journal News. I think Mr. Gromack disputes that. Also, we have a major problem fully funding our pension benefit and insurance liability. It's not a FASB requirement. FASB is a Financial Accounting Standards Board, but it is reported by the Government Accounting Standards Board, and they think that we have, at this point, an actuarial present value liability of $150 million, which has not been reported. Thank you.
Well, if we just go our first question, I'm going to start with the supervisor, and then I'll give Mr. Asher a chance to respond, and then we'll alternate the rotation. Mr. Asher, I'm sorry, Mr. Sabatini. Mr. Asher was the town council. A town council candidate, I apologize. And then we're going to ask Mr. Sabatini, we're going to start, give him the first question, so no one gets stuck with answering first all the time. Okay, so the question for Supervisor Gromack. This is from a member of the audience. The town has a lot of debt. This is that person's statement. Is it due to past budget shortfalls? Do you have a plan to pay down this debt? How would you respond to that, sir?
First of all, the town does not have a lot of debt. If you go to Comptroller DiNapoli's and Standard & Poor's various websites, they tell you what a town of our size and a town of our budget should have as debt. And we are well below the numbers that are recommended by the State Comptroller and Moody's and Standard & Poor's. So our debt is below what the recommended debt for a town our size should be. What we do every year, obviously, is anyone else. We borrow money to do important projects, and we mortgage it over 15, 20, or 30 years, and we pay off a certain amount of debt, and we add new projects, and that's how you keep the town fresh. If you don't continue to do certain infrastructure projects, they catch up on you. So every year we do a certain number of projects with new debt and retired debt, and that's certainly the way to go. You would never want to tax people the full amount of every project you do. You spread it out over 30 years, and you get grants for it to bring down the debt.
Mr. Sabatini, and again, I apologize for calling you Mr. Asher. Mr. Sabatini, let's get the record straight.
I don't have a problem with the debt that Clarkstown is carrying. I have other problems with the financial management of the town, which we'll talk about later. I think Clarkstown is carrying a reasonable amount of debt. They're certainly carrying it at a fairly low interest rate, primarily because of the AAA rating, which I do also want to talk about later. Clearly, you retire debt as it comes due. You establish new debt for projects that require debt, and that requires approval of the entire board, and I think that's fine.
I have questions now specifically for Mr. Sabatini and specifically for Mr. Gromack. So I'm going to ask Mr. Sabatini this question first. What do you think of the Taylor Law, and what action will you take if you are elected to deal with the financial problems caused by increasing salaries and benefits and costs?
The Taylor Law, as I would think most people know by now, was enacted in order to prevent public employees from striking. That was its original purpose. The quid pro quo for the public service employees granting that was to allow them arbitration in times of salary disputes. The arbitration did not work for us this time, but that was because we have a AAA rating, for one thing, and a $20 million reserve fund. I think at the town level, there's not much you can do about the Taylor Law. I think the Taylor Law at the state level requires some tweaking. I don't necessarily think it should be done away with. I think we need to work within the confines of the Taylor law. I think as a team, we can work with the people that are governed by the Taylor law to work down the costs without destroying the Taylor law.
Did you want to respond to that, Mr. Gromack?
I think we're in general agreement. I think the Taylor law was important in its day. It certainly needs to be reformed. I think it's an unfair advantage that it places municipalities. I'm hopeful that the state legislature and Governor Cuomo in their next round of reforms take a look at binding arbitration and the Taylor law to help municipalities get on an even footing. Certainly the arbitrators that have been giving awards not only around Rockland but Westchester, Nassau, Suffolk, and around the state have been giving numbers that are far in excess of what people would think are reasonable, and I agree. So hopefully those things will start to see some movement in Albany reforming those antiquated laws.
Thank you. This question is specifically for Supervisor Gromack. What guarantees do we have that the Nanuet Mall will be rebuilt as opposed to being simply torn down, and then their assessment will be reduced?
Well, one, their assessment is probably at the lowest point it could ever be. We're confident that when they start to move forward with the planning process and the demolition, that we'll have certain safeguards within the process to make sure that it is built and in a timely fashion. We've had some very good discussions. They're very anxious to move forward, and certainly the town will have certain things in the way of permits and escrow accounts to guarantee that it moves in a timely fashion. I have to say, though, that this is a project that we've long waited for, and Simon has spent a lot of money currently getting ready, and they're very anxious to start. So we have a town that is ready, willing, and able to work with them, a planning board that can't wait to get started on the site review, and I believe that everybody should feel very secure that once this process starts, they're going to move as quickly as they can because they want to be open by November of 2013. I believe certainly it will happen, but we'll have certain safeguards to make sure it does.
This is a question for both candidates, and we're going to start with Mr. Sabatini. Do you believe that it's a conflict of interest to accept campaign contributions for companies that do business with the town? Part one. Part two, have you accepted contributions from companies that do business with the town?
Part two is my answer is no. Part one, the conflict of interest, it depends on how they do business and what business that they're doing. I think in general, it can be a conflict of interest and has to be reviewed from that standpoint before contributions are accepted. I believe that in this town, David Carlucci said Rockland County is a county whose political culture is pay to play. I believe that to be true, and I think that shows in some of the campaign funds that you see, in particular Mr. Gromack's, $985,000, $700,000 of which was picked up in the 8 years he's been supervisor. You could see that for yourself on the Board of Elections website and decide for yourself whether or not there are conflicts there.
Mr. Gromack.
No, I think in New York State we have very rigid campaign finance laws that Albany has put in place over the years. The Board of Elections certainly has been very diligent in making sure that candidates and officers comply with those laws. They are certainly open to the public for their scrutiny, and there are campaign limits that we all follow. So we have ethic limits that we have to follow, campaign numbers that we follow, and everything is certainly above board, open, and very transparent. And as I say, I think every candidate follows the letter of the law that comes out of the Campaign Finance Reform Act that the state legislature passed.
Okay. This is for both candidates. We're going to start with Mr. Gromack. Given the proposed cuts by the county, will you support paying officer salaries to be part of the narcotics unit or the intelligence task force?
No. The Narcotics Task Force, I think, is one of the most valuable task forces and intel that we have. The county executive made a commitment that he would fully fund and reimburse all the towns that contribute officers to this critically important unit. It's not good enough for the county executive to say he's broke and he can't afford to pay his bills. When the individual says we have no money, you've got to remember the county department, the county budget is about $700 million. 700. It's not zero. So when the county executive says he's broke, that's not a good answer. He has $700 million. It's about priorities. This unit is $2.6 million. He just doesn't want to pay it. So as supervisor, and the other supervisors agree, we're simply not going to cave to his whims and say, you need to take it over. It's too easy for the county to shift the responsibility to towns and villages. They need to own up to that responsibility, keep that unit intact, and pay the bill. And again, I'm hopeful that the county legislature will override any cuts in this area that the county executive may release in his budget next week.
Mr. Sabatini, if you were supervisor, would you continue to pay the salaries of the officers that are part of the narcotics unit and the intelligence task force?
In all honesty, I think it's very simplistic to say we're going to say no to the county, because if the county won't pay, the county won't pay. There's nothing we can do to force them. We don't have the leverage. I would not continue to pay the Intel task force. I would certainly continue to pay the drug task force, and I would find savings in the police department or other departments to pay for it. As Mr. Gromack says, it's only $2.6 million. We spent $3.6 million in overtime in the police department. I think if we cut that back, and that's a management problem, we could easily pay for the task force.
All right, this question again is for both candidates, and we're going to start with Mr. Sabatini. With declining property values and a decline in tax revenue from various sources, how do you plan to compensate for the decline in revenue in terms of town budgeting and town spending?
Well, frankly, I mean, we're in the worst recession that this country has seen since the Great Depression, and I don't see the revenues coming back anytime soon. So the flip side of that coin, anyone will tell you, is cost. We must cut costs. We can't keep covering budget increases through the use of the reserve fund, which as I said, is a depleting asset. We need to cut wherever we can cut. This town board has a habit of waiting for people to retire and or die, unfortunately, before they eliminate positions. We need to be proactive. We need to take out people who don't earn a fair day's wage for a day's work, and the departments, some departments associated with them. It's the only way we can balance that revenue cut, and that's what I would do as supervisor.
Mr. Gromack, how would you compensate for decrease of revenue?
Well, we were so proactive that we started not filling positions back in 2004 and 5 before there was this huge crisis. So we started to do that, and we were proactive. We didn't react to an emergency. We started as a town board to move in that direction. So that's why we've been able to reduce our workforce by 70 people over the last 5 years. That's why we've been able to reduce the personnel costs by $7 million per year. That's why we moved forward with consolidation when it wasn't a fancy phrase back in 2004 and 5. People now are running around like a chicken without a head saying the sky is falling, we've got to lay off employees, we've got to do things to manage our budget. The town of Clarkstown, in a bipartisan way, started doing that in 04, 05, 06. So we were able this year to have a budget that was zero, last year 1.6, and still provide the essential services that our residents want and deserve. So we've done what needs to be done, and we did it prior to the crisis.
This question again for both candidates, and I'm reading it just as it comes from the audience, and you may respond to it in whichever way you feel is most appropriate. And we're going to start with Mr. Gromack. This is quote: "The fiscal management policy of this administration is one of selling town assets, for example, landfill for $15 million, part of the Trap Haven property, to garner AAA ratings and to allow uncontrolled spendings and raises for everyone, including yourselves. What spending controls, if any, would you enact?"
We've already enacted them. We've consolidated government. We've cut 70 employees. But when you're talking about town assets, that you got to understand how to manage government. Supreme Court ruled a number of years ago that we would have flow control legislation that was the law of the land. That really made landfills and transfer stations obsolete. The Rockland County Solid Waste Authority would be now the manager of that flow control. So once the Supreme Court made that decision, it was impractical and a bad business decision for Clarkstown to continue to have a transfer station. So we appraised it, we sold it to the county for $15 million, and we did one thing better. We met with the bonding agency, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, and they said, rather than just spend the money on projects, it would be wise to create a tax stabilization fund, and we did that. And the term stabilization means to level things off. So obviously there were some people that advocated several months ago that we should just return $15 million. Well, we're returning part of that money year by year to level and stabilize taxes. That's a prudent business decision that Wall Street, and that's a dirty word nowadays, but that Standard & Poor's has embraced and given us and maintained our AAA bond rating. I can go into tractate later if you want. My time is up.
Mr. Sabatini, would you care to comment on this question about fiscal management policy and spending controls?
I certainly would. First, I know Alex and I have disagreed on this in the past, but they did not cut 70 employees or cut 70 people. They cut 70 open jobs or let people retire and didn't fill those jobs. As I said before, Clarkstown doesn't fire anyone ever. Secondly, the AAA bond rating and the tax stabilization fund are biting us every time we look to arbitration. The key factor in arbitration is ability to pay. When they see a $15 million or $20 million tax stabilization fund, which is depleting, and they see a AAA bond rating, and they don't see $150 million unfunded liability for pension benefits, they say, you have more than enough money to pay, and why shouldn't we punish you with a high increase for the police department?
Thank you. I would like to each of the candidates to take a little bit of time before you make your closing statements. Tell me what you think your vision is as either the incumbent supervisor or the candidate supervisor. What is your vision for the future of Clarkstown? Mr. Sabatini.
My vision for Clarkstown, believe it or not, it would be to have my children come back to Clarkstown. They can't now afford to be here. My grandchildren will have even a harder time because taxes just keep going up and up and up, and businesses are leaving Clarkstown because taxes are too high. Residents are leaving Clarkstown because the taxes are too high. If we don't control taxes, we're going to lose this town. And in fact, in 5 to 8 years, unless we do something really drastic, the tax stabilization fund, at the rate we're using it, will be gone. And then what do we do to cover taxes? The answer is we have to raise them. So if we don't cut costs, we're in trouble. My vision is a Clarkstown from 20 years ago.
My vision for Clarkstown is not to go backwards 20 years ago because I don't think that was the best of times. I think my vision is where we're headed now. We've got a recreation department that is second to none, that I see people using our pools, our community centers, our beautiful walking trail in Congress. That's my vision. My vision is to have an economic development team that's attracting business, that has brought new confidence to our town, like having Simon build a new neighborhood mall, like having Stop and Shop build on a dilapidated Bradley site, and Into Electronics come and renovate a beautiful complex off of 303. A vision where businesses are saying, we have confidence in Clarkstown, and if you build a new Main Street, we will renovate stores up and down Main Street, which they're doing. A vision where our storekeepers, our merchants are coming to our town and saying, you know, this is really making a difference. We're attracting new business. My vision is to have a safe community. We're one of the safest communities in the nation, and we will continue to be that. My vision is to make sure that we continue to have a quality education system, and while we don't have control, it's all part of a partnership. My vision is to provide the very best government, a cost-effective government that affords people to have the quality of life they need and deserve.
Thank you very much. This is the end of our formal questions. We're now going to go to our closing statements of about 3 minutes each. And because Mr. Sabatini made his opening statement last, I'm going to ask you to make your closing statement now, sir.
Thank you. And again, thank you for having me here tonight. I want to close the same way I opened. I want to talk about taxes, term limits, and transparency. I'm just going to reverse the order slightly. Term limits, 3,500 people wanted term limits on a referendum. They were refused. 2 members of the town board wanted a public hearing. They were refused. You don't have a voice. Your voice is not wanted here. Your opinion doesn't count. They know better. As far as taxes go, as I said, the reserve fund is depleting. It will probably be gone at the rate we're using it in 5 to 8 years. I think Mr. Gromack is hoping for 8 years because that's when he's going to retire, and that pension is going to hurt us even more. It's called kicking the can down the road. It's not something that we need to do to be financially responsible. And as far as transparency, unannounced closed meetings in order to accept a resignation of an arrested felon who is accused of robbery using a town car at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And he was allowed to resign because he had done that during working hours, apparently. Not fired. As I said, Clarkstown never fires anyone. Listen, we have a problem. I mean, at the Bardonia Civic Association, we were asked specifically if you ever received indirectly or directly money from Mr. Bergstall, one of the biggest builders in Rockland County, and in fact, Clarkstown. He is planning on doing the quick check in Bardonia, which most of the community is against. I said no. Mr. Gromack said no. But we have information subsequent to that that says that's not exactly true. He's an old friend, and he does, in fact, contribute in several different ways, not cash, to Mr. Gromack. This is an ethical problem that has been with Clarkstown for 30 years, not just now, and it needs to be dealt with today. If you think that your vote doesn't count because you're only one vote, or if you think, well, it's been like this for 30 years, so what am I going to do now? Then what you're doing is you're abrogating your rights as citizen to change government. And unless you feel like I do, that every vote counts, and if we need change, which we do desperately, the way to do it is at the ballot box. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gromack. Your closing statement.
I'm certainly not ready to retire. I know Mr. Sabatini is retired, but I still have a lot more to give our town, and I can continue in that capacity of giving back to my community. However, I too also believe in term limits, and as Mr. Sabatini said, at the ballot box, and people make that decision on whether they want to continue with the elected officials they have in town government, county government, state government, and it's at the ballot box where they can make their voices heard, and I support that. Certainly, we talked about finances. My finances are all above board and certainly on the website. Please review them. But what's more important is the job that we do here for the people of Clarkstown. It's been my pleasure and honor to serve, and I think we've brought effective, open, and transparent government to the people of Clarkstown. Again, you don't manage a $130 million budget and have a situation where, again, where we are without having consolidation, making efforts in trimming the employees. In fact, we have had to fire a few employees, Mr. Sabatini, much to your surprise. But we did it in a much better way. As people retired, we did fill positions. Those were real positions. They weren't empty positions. They were people that retired. So we did it early on, not in a crisis situation. We were lucky. We didn't have to lay off people. There's no pride in laying off your fellow workers. We did it, as I said, in a humanitarian way. We did fill, and we made sure our employees picked up the slack. We have a healthy reserve of $19 million, and that's due to very positively managing the affairs of this town. We have a tax stabilization fund. That's not a bad word. That's a great word. Wall Street and Standard & Poor's have embraced that. Again, we're one of the safest communities. We have a community that has confidence in the people that we have here running town hall. We have a community that is confident in Clarkstown and is business friendly, and more businesses are coming here each and every day. As I said, we've got a recreation department that is second to none. We've got world-class school districts. We've got a town that we're all proud of. And it's very easy to stick up here and try to throw darts and arrows, but they just don't land, because the people in Clarkstown, I think, enjoy the town they live in. They've got confidence in the elected officials on both parties that they've put into office. And when you look at the outside bonding agencies, they're the ones that have come forward and given us kudos for the job that we've done on our finances. So I really believe that the future is bright for Clarkstown. I believe that the work that I've done as your supervisor has paid off. My connections and contacts in Albany to Washington have brought us over $30 million in grants to do important projects like sewer renovation, downtown restoration, open space. And I think it's a record of achievement and openness. I'm always available for the residents. I work at this 7 days a week. I'm in early and I stay late. And when anybody calls, I get back to them, whether it's a drainage problem or anything at all. We solve their problems. And more often than not, we get beautiful letters and recommendations from people saying, we're proud of the town we live in. So my view and my optimism for Clarkstown is rising every day, because it's a team of people that live, breathe Clarkstown. And again, I'm proud of the service, and I hope and look forward to continuing as your town supervisor.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. That concludes the first Clarkstown candidate debate. We have heard from candidates for county legislature, for judicial offices, for town clerk, for superintendent of highways, for town council, and for town supervisor. Thanks also to WRCR for carrying this debate live, and to O'Sullivan Tree Service for sponsoring the radio portion of the debate. This program comes to you from WRCR, Spring Valley, New York. Please stay tuned for the news at 10 o'clock.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice job. Thank you. Thank you.